Thanks, everybody. We are now starting our Gamemaker meeting. So, of course, we kind of broke our little minor rule where we want you to be able to use these on the lab computers, except you couldn't. So we put it in our messages that if you want to follow along, you will have to do so on your own computer. Hopefully, those of you who wanted to have brought your own. If not, then this meeting will be recorded, so that way later on, and we'll try to expedite how fast this one goes, because at least the other ones you could have followed along. This one will be recorded and put up onto YouTube, so that way if you want to use it later and use it as a guide, you still can. And also, don't click the giant register button when you do download it. Just go to download, because it does. They have some weird thing with Opera. I don't know, but it's all optional, so don't worry about it if it asks you about anything. Otherwise, we're more or less jump in that Gamemaker is a great intermediate way between visual programming and like coding. It has the ability to do both. And today we're just going to stick with the visual programming side, but know that it can lead the way to you learning a sort similar to C or C++, if you know what either of those are. But it's definitely a lot easier to start off with the visual if you haven't started that yet. Gamemaker was recently changed last year, so that way it is completely free. So if you want to make a game with it, you don't have to pay for it anymore. That was the case a year or two ago. So now I can wholeheartedly recommend it instead of some other web browser stuff that was if only it was Gamemaker. But beyond that, Gamemaker has been used for a couple projects, most notably Undertale, which of course I'm going to sing its praises for. But there's been plenty of games that they're showing right now, I immediately forgot what every other Gamemaker game.
There was Chicory and Hyper Light Drifter.
Yeah, Hyper Light Drifter, that's what it's called. That's what they were showing. But yeah, there's Chicory. So it's been used by plenty of professionals and hobbyists alike. And that's why it's so powerful, because it's not just for hobbyists or just for education. You can use it to make either AAA or hobby projects. There you go. Okay. So if you have it installed, it will just look like this. I already have two because, I've been practicing with it. But it might ask you to sign in. You don't have to do that. You can just click away. As long as you can click the new button, you can select your different project type. It will give you a couple of blueprints if you want to get a couple of ideas of how they did these projects. But we're going to start with a blank game. And we're going to make... Actually, I should show you. Nope, that was not the right one. We're going to make a really... Where is it? Yeah. We're going to make a really simple just platformer game. So just a little left and right, and you can move around. Okay, so let's head back. Okay, so we're just gonna make it start from scratch. So of course, new game, and then your template. It'll try and show you a bunch of different ones, but you can just go straight to blank. I can pull up. Where's this? There we go. Okay, and of course, name it what you want. 223 meeting, and then of course save it wherever you want. I just save mine in my default documents folder. And then immediately you're thrown into what looks like a totally separate desktop, and these are known as workspaces. What's interesting is that not everything has to be on one space. So if you're working on multiple different parts of your project at once, you can open multiple windows, like up here. I'm making multiple workspaces. They're all empty, so they all look identical. But I could have one window here that's here's the main character, here's another window here that's all the enemies, and then here's another window here that has all the levels. And it can really help compartmentalizing all the different parts of your game. Over on the right side are a bunch of pre-made folders for you to help organize your game. These are basically a bunch of different data types, different objects. So it's your animations, what fonts you have installed, what scripts you'll have running, and which sounds there are. And I recommend you follow these very, very closely, because you will have copies of different, different related objects that are likely going to have very similar names, but the difference is what data type they are, and you'll combine them into whatever project in the end. So if you have 5 different things called player, and the only difference is their file extension, it's best to have them in the different folders, and not just in one giant like mega resource folder. And of course, speaking of resources, the most basic one is known as a sprite, and that's just an image of some sort. So it's like, you know, if it's when Sonic runs left or right, that's what it looks like. If you want to create a new resource object, you'll typically right-click into whatever folder you want to go into, and then there's this create of, and then it gives you all the different data types. So of course, if we're using a sprite folder, we want to click on the sprite object. That's what we want to create. And it will immediately open a different window, which will probably take up the entire middle, as you can see. If you want to zoom out, you can use the mouse wheel, or control, and then like moving your, oh wait, let me click out of it, and then moving your mouse. All the different like keyboard shortcuts are going to be a little bit crazy, so I'm gonna shout them out every time so you remember which one they are, because keeping track of them is like vital, but also incredibly confusing. So this is just our general, it named it Sprite 1, but of course we're going to make it player. The most common type of like naming convention is just lowercase, whatever data type it is, and then like your actual name. So if this is Sprite, I'm going to start with lowercase s, and then like player, because we're going to have like 5 different things called player. So keeping that in the name, keeping the name type is really helpful for organizing it. So I can tell this is a sprite of the player. Now, we don't have anything actually drawn yet, so it just shows the kind of like default like PNG background. Of course, you can edit your name here if you want to. Most of these, this is just how big it is. The edit image is obviously you're going to edit the image. And then import lets you import some kind of picture. But I'm just going to show you how to, you can use your preferred drawing program. I'm just going to show you how to use the one that's built in. So if you go into edit image, immediately you'll get thrown into a totally separate workspace, which looks just like Piskel, which I think we showed last semester. But you know, if you don't know what that is, it's got basic brushes, it's got a bunch of colors to choose from, and then your different tools down here. And the middle is whatever you want to draw. So I want to choose the black color, so I'm just going to do this. I'm probably going to, we'll see what happens. You can just click and draw. So I'm just going to draw Stickman. Yes, I am an artist. How could you tell? And then, you know, it has like classic stuff, like here's the fill bucket tool. So that way, you know, his head isn't just like fully opaque, and it will show the background behind him. And you can see what the finished one looks like over here on the left. You'll see all of these in this minimal window, so I don't usually look at this far left side of the different properties. We're going to make this more safe. This is also an animation program, so it's not just the one image. You can also make multiple and make it some kind of animation. So up here is your different frames for what your player will look like. So if you click the plus button, you'll be given a second frame. And it does have onion skin capability. Where is it? Yeah. Up here, it has the toggle onion skinning. So, you know, if we want him to run, we don't want him to completely change what he's like running. And I'm just going to do a basic like 2-frame one. So I'm just going to draw over his head again. And we'll just do like a mid sprint. And so, oh wait, yeah. And I'll need to paint bucket little entry. So yeah, now it kind of looks like he's running a little bit. And now the default is 30 frames per second. So with only 2 frames shown 15 times each, it's going to look a little fast. In that case, you will want to go back to your workspace. I mean, you can do it over here in the properties panel, which, as you notice, as I change the workspaces, that stays consistent. But you can also change it over here. So of course, if you want your frames per second, you can either up here, which you can do a bunch of different settings, or over here. And since it's only 2 frames, I'll probably just want like 1 frame per second or something. So it's just like, we can do 4. That's pretty fast. That's something. It looks like he's moving. That's all that really matters. So now we have our little animation. And you can do the same thing from your main workspace. Oh yeah, okay. So, of course, a sprite is just an image, basically. It doesn't hold any mechanical meaning for your game. Those go to what are known as objects, which are up here in your file manager over here. So we can create an object called player, and then we're going to assign it the player image. And as you can see, this is why I really stress keeping to the file system, because you're going to have 5 different player things. So of course, I'm going to create, and then not a sprite, because this is the object folder. So it should be the 5th one from the top. And it'll open it. Again, this is your workspace. And again, I'm using control. I'm holding my left control, and then just moving my mouse in and out. And that lets me zoom in and out. And it'll open again like more windows. It's its own little desktop. So an object is currently nothing because it doesn't have a sprite, doesn't have an image, doesn't know what to display. It'll show you, again, really tries to emulate that operating system feel. So you want to go into what, by default, it will just show your sprites. So you can just click that once, and then S player. Well, of course, it's my player object. And now I know that my object 1, which, yeah, let's follow the naming convention. Lowercase, whatever it's called, so O, and then player. And so you now have O player and S player, and they look identical, minus that one little thing. So now that I have my player object, looks like my player sprite. So again, keep that naming convention. I'm going to really like stress that. Yeah. And what objects are is basically a collection of events that trigger over and over again. So you can add different types of events. A lot of, I think all of them are pre-programmed, so you can learn what most of these are, but we're just going to keep with the most basic ones. So stuff like create is like, as soon as this object is created, what do you want to do? Destroy, when this object is destroyed, what do you want to do? And that's basically all of these. So you can see like when a key is pressed, how does it want to react? So it's just like regular programming logic. If something, then do something else. Except these are a little bit easier because you have a list to choose from instead of having to create it yourself. Where is it? Yeah. So I'm going to create 2 variables because it's just a platformer. It's just going to be its horizontal speed and its vertical speed, like up and down, left and right, how fast it's going. So we're going to make those variables at the very beginning. So we're just, as soon as it's created. And it's going to ask you, do you want to use the C# kind of coding, or do you want to use visual? And we're going to be using the visual type coding. And then I'm just going to do don't ask again for this project because it's going to ask you literally every single time you try and make an event, which is a little bit lame. So following these kind of nodes again, this is what it does as that creation happens. You can see that there's all these different little pictures, and as you hover over them, you'll be able to see what they are. These are the thens. These are the effects that are going to occur. And you can scroll through, there's a lot of them, and I'm not going to explain every single one of them for obvious reasons. But you can search through them. So if you're like, oh, I want to change the speed of my player. Oh, I can just type speed. And you're like, oh, great, it shows me everything that has to do with some kind of speed. But we're just going to assign some variables. So I can either literally just search every single one of them and be like, oh, here's a assigned variable. Or I can search it and be like, variable. I'm like, oh, great. What you want to do is drag and drop it into that middle. There we go. Okay. And it'll come up with like a little bubble. If you've ever used Blender, it's kind of like the node system. You've probably already guessed from the entire aesthetic. It really likes its nodes. So when I assign a variable, again, I don't know how many of you have done computer science, but it's just a name that represents some kind of piece of data. So if I have like your name is just a bunch of like letters, or like my age is just how many years have passed since I've been born. It's just like a number of some kind. So my name is just going to be like the horizontal speed. I'm going to fully type it out so that way when we get to the expressions and all the like math, you'll be able to like read that out really easily. And I'm just going to set that to 0 because they're going 0 miles per hour. And I'm going to do the same thing for the vertical speed. So there's a difference based on where you drag and drop it. So you see how on the side, on the top and bottom, there's like this line. If you go up and down, that means they just kind of happen one after another. Oh, I guess it doesn't allow you on this one. But once we have some different logic that occurs at different times, you'll be able to do different things. So just keep in mind that it goes down typically. So first it will set the horizontal speed, and then I'm going to name it vertical speed. How far it's going left and right. And then it will set the speed. And obviously that doesn't matter now, but later if you're setting things and you want one thing to occur first, make sure that's at the top. It goes top down. Okay. Yeah, so we want to change that speed based on what key is being pressed. So if you press left or right, you're going to want to run left or right. And that's going to occur more than once, not just when it's created. So this is what's known as the step event, which is like, think of it as stepping through every frame of your game. So this is run over and over and over again. Every frame update, every second, less than a second that this game is running, it's going to run whatever effects you do. You can set like specific parts. You're like, oh, I want this at the beginning or I want this at the end, but you can just do the basic step and that will work just fine. So we want to do some kind of keyboard thing. So of course I could just scroll down. There's one, yeah, there's mouse and keyboard, but I can also just do like key. So I want to stress another thing. There are two ones that are named very similarly, but they have very different effects. There's one called if key pressed, and that one is if it presses down, it will trigger a single time. So if you press the left button, it will move one step to the left, and then it will never trigger that again. If you do if key down, it will run over and over every time it's down. So that's the one we want to use because we want to constantly run as they press the left button. So it lets you do a little like drop down right here. So you can it can just show you which ones. So of course, if we want them to move left, we're going to want them to, if they press the left key, we want them to start moving left. Now, the thing is, there are some built-in variables. I know we named ones called horizontal and vertical speed, but there are ones like, we want that to affect its place. And of course, if you know how maps work, your X and Y coordinates. There's no Z. It defaults to 2D games. So it's just X and Y you have to worry about. So we're going to assign a variable, and this is, since it's an if statement or if block, you can move it to the right side, which you can see from that little thing that's moving on the side. If you, it's like purple-ish. If you do that, it will trigger when that happens. If I move it down where this little blue thing happens, a variable assignment is gonna happen no matter what. But if I move it to the left, and you'll see it's connected by a little node string, it will happen when the left key is down. So what's very helpful about Gamemaker is that it will show you what variables you've declared. So if you're like, okay, I remember it was called speed, but I don't know which one it is. There's a lot of built-in ones, but if you check out the purple ones are usually the ones that you have declared yourself. So just look for the purple and then it will show you, oh, there's my horizontal speed that I declared and that vertical speed that I declared. So I can just click that and be like, ah, it was called horizontal speed. So you don't have to go back and look through every single variable you declared. And a positive X value means you're going to the right, and a negative X value means you're going to the left. So if you want the left, you actually want to be -5, not +5. And of course, now we're going to do the right key. Where is... Oh yeah, there's recently used right here. But again, I can also just type in key to search it. Make sure it's key down, not key pressed, so that way it will continue running. And since I want it to run no matter what, like I don't care if the left key is being pressed. That doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things of me pressing the right key. Make sure the little blue bar is at the bottom. And so that way it will go down, it will check this, and it will just immediately go to the next one. It doesn't matter if the left key is being pressed on this end. So I'll just run through my lines, make sure, oh, that's the right key. And then I'm going to change that variable to +5. Yeah. And so now if the left key is being pressed, it'll tell it to go -5 to the left. And if you're going right, you're going to go +5 to the right. Now thing is, since that's just a name that doesn't mean anything to Gamemaker, we need to assign it to one of the variables that it does know. So like I said, it's 2-dimensional, so you have an x and a y value, and those are one of the built-in variables. So if you start modifying that, you can modify what happens in the game itself. So I want to assign this variable no matter what, actually. So again, make sure it's at the bottom. Oh, come on, there you go. So this key gets checked, this key that gets checked, and then this variable assignment is going to happen no matter what. So there's a bit of a secret, is that it's not just assigning it, you can also add to a variable. So first, I'm going to just type in x, and again, good. I will say good though. Gamemaker tells you this is a built-in variable, and this we have special things that we are doing with this. And of course, we want to change it. We want to change the x variable, but just you're not declaring that. That's built in. And this relative button means instead of setting it equal to, we're going to modify it by this much. So I'm modifying it by 0, which of course that means it's not going to move at all. I want to move it by my horizontal speed. So now it will affect x, it will add the horizontal speed to it because it's quote-unquote relative. So we'll want to test that out by building out a really quick level. But yeah, again, if left, make sure it's connected, go -5. If it's going to the right, go to +5. And then no matter what, affect x. These are where rooms come in. There's one already here. You can see it's filled in. And that little home icon means this is the first thing that's going to show up as soon as your game boots, which right now we want because we don't have like a title screen or anything. If you double click it, you'll bring into your own little workspace, which is just a giant black void with a bunch of coordinates on it. So if we run our game now, it's just gonna be a giant black screen because it doesn't exist. What's interesting is that it has these things called built-in layers. So of course the background is some kind of image, which you could probably guess from this icon. And instances are where your game objects will be. You can put other things on different layers, but just stick to objects put on your instances layer. And again, this is why I'm stressing that file naming. Do I put the O player or the S player? Well, the one that's an object. That's what I want to put on my instances. So you can just drag and drop it. And as you can see, it's a little hard to tell what our stickman looks like because he's got black limbs, but he's got that like white little head. So if we want to do that, we can change our background to probably a nice white color. So you'll want to, you can affect your layer by clicking on it on that left properties pane. And then you can see all the different properties. So it's like, do you want to stretch it? Do you want to change its speed if it's got an animation or something? I'm just going to change this color so that way it's like nice and white. Light mode jump scare. But now the little guy shows up. And so since you just drag and dropped it, it's an object that's on the instances layer. And you can see in that properties panel, that's your player. So if you have like a bunch of enemies, it'll have all of them nice and neatly listed out. So now if we play it, well, of course it's not going to do anything first. Well, it does default to playing your little animation, whatever you did. But if you press the left or right keys, boom. Now, he does keep going forever and ever, and that's because we never set the speed to 0. We only ever set it to positive or -5. But that is something. So make sure you save, obviously. So if we want to do that, yeah. So we can apply some kind of force to it. So of course, if you've ever taken like physics, there's something called like drag, and that will like slow you down. It's a lot better to apply like physics than just to like be like, if nothing's being pressed, set to 0, because then you're going to have duplicate if statements. You're going to be like, if left is being pressed, be -5. Then if it's not being pressed, equals 5. Then you're going to duplicate like everything. That's just way too much. So applying some kind of something to that speed is a lot better. So I kind of lied that the only possible way to do it is in the creation event. You can also add variables directly from one of the menus. So to your basic object, there are these things down here called variable definitions. And these are a lot easier because it just shows it in a nice list instead of all those big blocks. So we're going to just add it using the add button, obviously. And we're just going to name it just the drag force. Of course, these are the built-in ones I don't care about. And default is just what does it start at, and then what type it is just what data type it is. So real means like a real number, which means you can have decimals, while like integer is like whole numbers and string is like some kind of text. And then Boolean is like true or false. The other ones are good, but you don't like need them. I'm just gonna keep it default to it's a number of some kind. So if I set it to 1, and what we're going to do is that we're going to apply this to the speed over time. So if the player stops pressing one of the buttons, it will gradually slow down. But if they keep pressing it, it will be constantly set to that 5th number over and over and over again. So we head on back to our step event. We'll want to actually get this, we'll want to assign something above, because we want to do our drag check before we actually apply those physics steps to the X position. So we're just going to change that horizontal speed. And because we're affecting it over time, so we're adding to it, we're going to make it relative. So we're adding to, not setting. We can just, or I guess we can. Oh yeah, because the way physics works, you have to multiply it. And since relative is like addition, we can just retype in horizontal speed, and then it'll apply it. So that way, horizontal speed is equal to, because it's not relative, that means it's equal to itself times whatever the drag is. So if I set it to, like, if you set it to 1, if you multiply something by 1, it's obviously the same all the time. But if you set it to some kind of fraction, it will like decrease ever so slightly over and over and over again. So that way, when we set it to 5, whenever we press that left and right key, it would be like, okay, I'm going to decrease it a little bit and then move to the X value. And then the next time the game updates, it will be like, okay, I'm not pressing anything. That's like, okay, let me update that speed, decrease it again, and that's happening no matter what, because it's not attached to any if statement. And then apply it again, and it will just slow down instead of just come to a straight halt. So now if you press left or right, he kind of gradually slows down because I did 0.9 instead of just 1. But if you want him to come to like a complete stop, just make it 0 means it's more harsh, like he'll stop on a dime. And then closer to 1 means it's a lot slower. So if I do like 0.3, he'll stop almost instantly. Though that will also mean he moves a lot slower, because again, it's physics based, so it's like he's kind of like stepping on like a harsher floor. And you can fix that by just now you can either leave it in the crate. No, you can leave it in your step function. You can just make it like bigger. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna take a quick break to figure out this physics stuff. But we're just, I actually did leave an intentional pause here, actually. But so make sure that we can get our guy moving left and right on the screen. So, okay,
Yeah,
so quick pause. Okay, so we're gonna do one last extra bonus. I want to show off a really cool tip that will help you if you have a lot of things in your step function. They're called scripts. Um, so we're going to do a little extra thing called scripts, and they're going to help you compartmentalize parts of your step function that don't like all gel together as much. So what happens is these things called scripts let you have pre-made versions of all these little blocks. So eventually you might have a step function that has hundreds or like tens of thousands of little code blocks. What you want to use instead is called scripts, where you can kind of just make it one block instead of like 4 different ones. So over here, it's called scripts, obviously. So if you create your, oh my gosh, where is it? There it is. Okay, script. You name it. Actually, it's best to just rename it in here. It'll automatically take care of it. So I'm gonna name it collision because I'm also gonna do a small bonus of how to like collide with some ground. So it's already named. It's called the function collision, and we can just replace whatever we want in this little red box. So this is going to be attached to our player character, so that way if they run into some ground, oh no, I'm gonna make this actually gravity. I'm gonna name this gravity. Because it's already remade. Player gravity. Okay. And it already updates, it pre-updates for you. So that way, when the player's Y value gets just updated over and over again. So I can already act like this is the player character, so whatever variables like that horizontal speed that we created, or that vertical speed, if I didn't close it, in that create function, that vertical speed I created, I can just start using that because it will attach this to the player. So it'll know what we're talking about. So there we go. So I'm going to assign variable, make sure again, it's like those if statements. It's on the inside. So I can just make it horizontal speed. No, not horizontal speed. I'm gonna make it the vertical speed. And see, it even brings it up for you. I'm going to make it relative because I'm going to add to it. And I'm just gonna make gravity just 1. I'm just gonna push it down by 1 every frame. So if I want to attach it to the player, I go back to my step function. Oh. And I add it kind of like any other piece of code, except instead of getting it from over here, where you typically will, you click and drag from your scripts. It should be. No, it has its own thing. Okay, so there is something. Yeah, I know. Me when I forget how Gamemaker works, and I use the C# version instead of the visual programming one. It's called execute script, and then you select it from the dropdown. So of course, it's going to be in your scripts, and that's called player gravity. And that's just going to happen no matter what. So now, of course... Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. If you had like 5 different like variables assigned here, instead of having these 3, you can instead just have it as this one block. If it will go down. Oh no, duh. I set the vertical speed add to 1, but I didn't change the Y value. So, yeah, it's a built-in variable. Make it relative because I'm adding to it. I'm just gonna add vertical speed. So now these 2 code blocks will occur here. So that way it's a little easier to see, so you don't have to have 500 different things. It just kind of falls off the face of the earth because there's no ground. I think I need to check a quick... I don't want to hang up. I want to not watch the stream. Yeah. Come on. Okay, there we go. If I want a ground object, I'm just going to make this really quick. Where is this? I'm, again, kind of speed running through everything we learned today. A sprite should not go in the objects folder. So I'm going to actually delete that and put that back in the sprites folder. If I make a sprite, again, I'm going to name it S because that's what the data type starts with. and then ground. If you want to edit something in the editor, you can just go to edit image. You can like import whatever you want, or you can draw. Since this is just a piece of dirt, just gonna fill tool it in. Oh yeah. If you want to actually add meaning to your drawings, you will attach it to some kind of object. Again, do it in your objects folder, not in your sprites folder. So if I do this, I do O, because again, it's an object. O ground. And when you want to set your object sprite, you're going to go into your sprites and set it to whatever you wanted. Now, the ground isn't going to be special. It's not going to have any events. Instead, actually, I'm going to do this. Yeah, I'm going to make a new script. And if you want to, instead of like cluttering up your step function with 500 different things, you can make what's known as a script in your script folder to occur as one big block instead of a bunch of different ones. So I'll do player collision. And so there is a block specifically titled if object, where is it? Yeah, collisions. I'm going to do a specific object because, you know, you might have some water that they can pass through. So if there's an object, of course, you make sure it's not the bottom one, it's the side one. If an object is at this place, and you can be like, which object do you want to detect? Where do you want to detect it? You can invert it. And then that's it. So which object do I want? I want to make sure if there's the ground. Where do I want to check it? Again, because this is going to be attached to the player object, I can use the player's variables, which include its location. So in the X, nope, not the previous X. I want the current X. And the player's current Y position. Then I can just set that, where is it? Yeah, variable. I can set that horizontal speed, nope, vertical speed, it's going down. That vertical speed to 0. So that way, what did relative? Oh, I did set X to relative. You are so right. That I want its actual X value, not in addition to the X value. I'm just gonna set its vertical speed to 0. And then if you want to attach your script to it, you want to use the execute script like block, select your script, which of course is going to be its collision. That's not, and we're not passing in anything. So now those two code blocks will occur. So actually, I want the gravity to occur second. Yeah, vertical speed. Let's see. Okay. So I don't want that to happen. Just add vertical speed to Y. And then if there is an object, set to 0. Otherwise, and if you want to use otherwise, it is called else. So if this turns out to be false, which means if there's not ground there, we're going to set it to 1. So that way, you know, they start falling. So again, do it on the side if you want to add something to it. If it will show up, we're going to add 1. So now we can tell, okay, so make sure that all this input is happening, check the left and right sides, and then do whatever our collision was and whatever our gravity was, which obviously here that saves us a total of like 1 extra line because it's only like a total of 3. But if you have a lot of things happening, doing it in just 1 block can really save you your headache. I didn't add any ground, so it's just going to fall down very, very slowly. And if you want to edit something in your room, you click and drag it. Yes, I don't want it in my... Okay, it automatically did that. Okay, so different layers have different like properties, so make sure your objects are on your instance layer. Since it's gonna fall so slowly, that's fine. Or just slowly land on it, and then boom, and then falls off the ground. Very slowly. And this would, and here's another hot tip, another cool keyboard shortcut. If you hold the Alt key, or it might be your right Alt key, just in case, because if I hold this Alt key, it makes me move around like this. If you hold the left Alt key, you can like paintbrush with it. So if you want to make like a nice dome. You can like nice and if it will go. Thank you. So now he'll collide with whatever, or I guess on the bottom, not the sides. But of course, if you want to, you could just copy and paste this collision stuff. So that, not to sound like a teacher, but maybe that can just be your homework assignment. You figure out yourself. How do you check the X value instead of the Y value? But I hope this did provide a nice overview, a basic overview of how Gamemaker treats its game objects, how you can modify their variables to get gameplay out of it, and finally making different room configurations so that way you can actually display different things to the player.